I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, we got a lot to... there's a lot of stuff to talk about today.
There's so much to discuss.
Because you're just back from Europe, right?
Europa,
and,
yes.
Plus, I mean, you were in Italy. Plus, Porsche has come out with something that I think is earth-shaking in a number of ways. And there's a lot of things that are really grinding my gears today, you know? A lot of things that are really kind of annoying me.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Good. This will be our therapeutic session where we debrief on everything. And we don't have a guest today, so that means we can really exhale.
So can I kick off with just the racing, the whole racing over the weekend that really drove me mad? Mainly the Formula One race in Monaco. Why do they do it?
What do you mean, why do they do it?
Nobody passed anyone. If you look at least the top six contestants after the restart, because there was a wreck right away, or a puncture and a wreck. And then for the rest of the race, the next 65 laps, it stayed the same. I mean, Leclerc started out on pole and finished, and it was teary and emotional because he's from there. But every single driver, there's a great video on YouTube that has the reactions of all the pilots, and they're all like, "Yeah, well, this is the most boring race on the schedule." With the exception of Leclerc. Yes, whatever. Without this dude, everybody else was like, "I don't even know why we race here." It is literally, they were 4 seconds off the pace. It was just a parade.
I know, and that makes it amazing and so fun. I love how upfront the drivers are about how much they hate it. And Hamilton's been saying, that was the worst race I've ever driven. Every time he races it, he says that. And so does Max. But I would offer the idea that Monaco is actually not about the race at all. It's about everything else. The race is, let's be honest, yes, we know they can't pass. Yes, we know the cars are so wide that the track is really sort of moot at this point, and all the drivers hate it, and they're all really upfront about hating it. But they all live in Monaco. This is the race that has been run for decades. This, to me, and forget the Brits and Silverstone, this is the crown jewel race of Formula One. This is Mecca. And if anybody is going to know one race in Formula One, it's probably the Monaco Grand Prix. It just is. The racing is completely beside the point. And by the way, the guys who actually win in Monaco, that's one of their feathers in their cap for their entire career.
I want a race in which nobody was passed.
It's still the most prestigious. It's still the gem. Everything about the fact that the organizers of the Monaco Grand Prix pay so much less to host the race. For instance, our story last week, which had the news that Monaco is going in to negotiate their new contract for 2026. And we have sources who have confirmed that Monaco pays about $20 million to host the race, which when you compare that with Saudi Arabia, which paid $60 million to host the race, that proves that Monaco is bringing a lot of other things to Formula One besides just a race location.
Right.
Because if Formula One wanted to just care about making money and could do any race locations wherever, they just host all their races in Saudi Arabia and Dubai and UAE and forget Monaco. But that's not what we're hearing.
I was thinking of, there's a couple solutions to this. Your point is a good one. This is just an event. It's not really a race.
No.
Why even bother with the race on Sunday? Why don't they just see who qualifies first and then make all those cars self-driving? This could be the autonomous driving event of the year. And then not only do you get to hang out on your yacht, and buy $5,000 bottles of champagne, but you can also maybe talk to Hamilton. The pilots could just hang out with the richest spectators, and they could make that an annual event of the calendar, because nobody cares about the actual race except for the winner. Congratulations, Monsieur Leclerc. It's just why bother? But if you are going to still care about motorsports at all, even a little bit, put them in go-karts. Make this the one race.
Oh, no.
Where
that is heresy.
I don't understand why, because there's nothing you can do with a Formula One car on that circuit.
This is what I would say. If you really care about watching Formula One cars go fast and interestingly around that circuit, go to the historic Monaco Grand Prix. Go to the vintage race, which happens every other year. And that is Formula cars going around that track in the way that God intended. And it's super fun and interesting and exciting. And then leave the rest of us who want to just have a really beautiful afternoon. And it's like if we're socializing, we're not going to be worried about missing anything on the racetrack. Because sometimes when I go to sporting events, I get a little bit annoyed when people try to talk to me because I actually do want to watch the game or the race or whatever it is. But in Monaco, there's no danger of that because if you're socializing, you're not going to miss anything anyway. So I actually think that's an advantage.
Yeah, I would rather watch the vintage. I mean, at least they're trying, right? These Formula One pilots in this race, after the restart, they were just like, I don't want to crash. Let's just get this over with. By the way, for an amazing motorsports experience that I did not expect, I watched the Indy 500 because I was in Ohio, surrounded by, I guess that's where people who watch the Indy 500 live. Certainly in New York, no one watched it. And
I don't think anyone in Europe did either.
It was amazing. I mean, it was truly, if you're willing to watch, a 500, a 200 lap race around an oval, which already is a
mind-numbing.
There was passing galore. There were accidents, there were pit stops, there were restarts, and it was unbelievably dramatic at the end with an amazing pass. And I thought that the McLaren team driver was going to win, and then it would have been the first Mexican ever to win the Indy 500, and then
Joseph.
Yeah, the Penske driver comes and wins it for the second time in a row. By the way, Borg Warner has been putting aside $20,000 a year for the last 22 years to give away to the next guy that wins it back-to-back, or gal that wins it back-to-back. And finally, that prize was taken, $440,000, plus the other, $4 million that Joseph Newgarden got for winning the race, like the biggest purse ever. It was an amazing spectacle, and it's billed as the greatest spectacle in motorsports. I'm not sure.
Well, I disagree with that. That's very American-centric. But I will admit that I did not catch that race. I was traveling, but I did see the last 5 minutes in that clip that you sent me, Matt. And it was really, really exciting. I even got a little bit emotional, and I don't even follow Indy. It was really exciting. But I do think it's a little bit like baseball, where you spend hours with nothing really happening, and then you have short bursts of activity. So with me, I could go to a couple innings of baseball and be really happy and then leave. And
well, it's for drinking.
Maybe that's
right? I think the Indy 500 is just as much for drinking as baseball and cricket. It's
You know what I thought was really interesting was last week when we spoke with Catherine Legg, and she talked about the difference between Formula cars and Indy cars and how analog Indy cars are.
Yeah.
It makes total sense, but to hear someone who has actually driven both talk about that and articulate that, I thought that was really interesting.
It was
how
cool.
Indy's just really raw, even still.
Yeah, her qualifying was awesome, and then she DNF'd in the race, which bummed me out because she was the only woman driving, and I think she blew her motor. But it was pretty cool. The other race that I watched this weekend was MotoGP. No surprise, I watch every single weekend from free practice to qualifying to the sprint to the race. It was amazing. Did not disappoint in Barcelona.
I know nothing.
Pecco Bagnaia won. He's the defending world champion, the Ducati factory team, their main rider. But Jorge Martin came in second, and Marc Marquez, who is like the legend that almost, destroyed his body crashing so many times and hasn't won in a while, podiumed as well for I think the third race in a row. So he's on a roll to come back and could win the championship. It's such an exciting season for MotoGP because Ducati needs to pick a teammate for Pecco. It's probably not going to be Enea Bastia. It will be either Jorge Martin or Marc Marquez. I'm guessing it'll be Jorge because Marquez is older and Ducati wants younger people for the factory team. But, I highly recommend watching MotoGP.
What is the average age of a MotoGP driver?
They're kids for the most part, right?
So they're like early 20s?
Yeah, early 20s. And you'll get the occasional superstar like Marquez was when he came in, or Pedro Acosta just turned 20, I think, on Saturday. And most of them are young 20s. Some of them get to be almost 40, like Valentino Rossi.
Wow.
Was almost 40 when he retired, and now he runs a team with Ducatis, by the way. It's just an amazing sport where there's a lot of passing. You don't know who's going to win. You don't necessarily, get on the podium just because you qualified well. Some people come up from the back. So it's awesome. And I hope that Liberty Media doesn't destroy that, because they're the owners of Formula One.
Right.
And now they're buying Dorna, which runs MotoGP. And I hope they don't make it into like a no passing, like we're only here for the party at Monaco kind of thing.
You think that is potentially a danger?
I don't think so, because motorcycles just can't get that wide, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And as Claudio Domenicali told us when he spoke with us, it's more about the pilot in this sport than it is about the machine. Obviously,
I remember that.
You know, Ducati and the European motorcycles are dominating right now, but it was the Japanese motorcycles in the past years, and it's really about, if you get someone like Marquez, who dominated with Honda, and now he's doing really well with Ducati, it just shows you that it's about the driver and not as much about the machine. Although, speaking of motorcycles, I was following your social media presence at Villa d'Este. Did I say it right?
Yeah, Villa d'Este, which is Lake Como.
Yes, Mr. and I love the area. But tell us first about that. I saw a motorcycle there that really intrigues me, but tell us about what else you saw and what was going on there. It's one of the most beautiful places, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful places in the world.
It really is, and it lives up to the reputation. So this is Villa d'Este Concours d'Elegance, which is held in Lake Como every year, and it's kind of it's an old car show. It's a beauty contest. It's 50 classic cars parked at on this hotel promenade right on the lake, and it's like a dog show but for cars, and cars are judged, and then they sort of roll through on the back side of the hotel, and everyone sits around and orders tuna and champagne, and you just sit and like applaud and have a nice time. And every year I've gone, it's been sort of cold and rainy, which is not what you expect for Italy in May, but it's a really nice time. It's
Wait, was it cold and rainy last weekend as well?
Yes, it was. It actually was until the afternoon. It's tempting to say that it's similar to Pebble Beach, that Concours d'Elegance, but it's actually far, far smaller. It's all only in one spot, really, so it's a lot easier to manage. And this event is actually sponsored by BMW. So BMW typically debuts a concept car and sometimes a concept motorcycle there. But whereas Monterey Car Week is really, it's actually a charity, and a lot of automakers debut new cars there. This truly is a BMW sponsored event. Obviously, other automakers do bring concepts, like Pininfarina had their very cool Pura Vision SUV, which I actually kind of love. That wasn't a debut. They had it last year at Pebble Beach. But BMW debuted this Skytop concept car, which is a V-8, which I thought was really interesting that they're debuting a concept that's not electric, because
or not a hybrid. It's just
it's like just straight up V8.
Wow.
And looks actually pretty. It looked pretty tame for a concept vehicle. And then
that's good news, because that means if they wanted to, they could actually put it out. It's like the M8, right? But just a better looking version.
Kind of. And I think last year they did a coupe version of basically the same thing. So these are not like wildly futuristic things. They look pretty relevant, actually.
What else? So was it all, besides that, was it all like old cars?
Yes, it's generally old cars. It's like really rare old cars, like one of one Italian brands like Serenissima. I think I'm saying that right. The Serenissima, which is like a racing team that was in Italy decades ago, and they made a handful of cars. It's just really obscure, mostly Italian stuff. I did see some really cool Rolls Royces there that are really not seen. A lot of the cars are based in Europe, so they might be cars that are not shipped to Pebble Beach, and they just want to kind of keep them in Europe. So yeah, it's old cars. There are a couple concepts. It's really small. It's actually quite pleasant, I would say. I really recommend going if you can. And the great thing is, on Sunday, there's a public day. Saturday was like more expensive VIP, but Sunday is a public day and tickets only cost €19. So it's really spectator friendly. People line the streets of Como and watch the cars roll through as they sort of go onto the lawn. So although it is elite and it looks and feels elite and exclusive, it's actually really accessible for anyone who just wants to come and stand on the street and watch the cars roll past and take photos and just feel like they're a part of it too. So I actually like that a lot. It's very dignified.
Anybody who has a palazzo on Lake Como.
Anyone who can, yeah.
Did you stay at George Clooney's house or the Bellagio?
I did not, and I hear that his house is for sale, actually. I haven't seen the listing, but I hear he's selling. Honestly, it's probably like blown up too much. No, I stayed at the hotel on site, the Villa d'Este Hotel, which I really recommend. It's really nice.
Was it a bit of a splurge weekend?
Yes, technically this was a holiday weekend for me. So even though I was at a car event, it was a bit of for me, it was a holiday. Yes, I did take days off. I do recommend it. But to that note, I actually have stayed in Airbnbs in the area, and I spoke with some friends who I saw there who had gotten Airbnb. So it can be done. Like, you can get things for cheap in Europe if you kind of know where to look, and an Airbnb can be had in the area. You might have an hour drive in, but you can do it if you want.
I have friends obviously who have places on Lake Como, but
she.
To go back to the Villa d'Este, and I was following your feed and also Magnus, and somehow I stumbled upon this BMW, not the Sky Top, which looks pretty cool, but I don't really care. But this R20 motorcycle concept that they have out. So although I'm a Ducatisti, I've always loved BMW motorcycles as well.
Haven't you owned some?
I've had
R9T, right?
I've had 4 BMWs. I've had a couple of S1000RRs and HP4, and also a couple of R9Ts. I bought one in New York and then one in Berlin where they make them. But they have the R18, which is their trying to get into the cruiser market thing, trying to beat Harley thing, and it's a giant 1800cc boxer twin. And I find it too big and unwieldy, and also feet forward with a boxer motor. To me, that's a bad combination.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that.
You need to wear shin guards.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
But they put out this boxer twin concept called the R20, which is a 2-liter boxer twin. So each cylinder is 1 full liter, and it's a roadster. So it's not a feet forward bike. It's at least mid controls, and I think it looks amazing. I truly hope that they bring it out. I can't imagine how that passes emissions, especially the one that they had at Villa d'Este, which has straight pipes on it.
I know.
But I would love to hear it.
Can I just be honest?
Yeah?
I didn't like it.
Really?
It really left me cold. I hated the color. The color,
it's like
it hurts my eyes. Yeah, my eyes can't decide whether it's pink or red. I hate it.
It's like the T-Mobile color.
Yeah, and they haven't said anything about the output or the actual engine. They haven't actually said anything about anything with it, which is just it just leaves me completely cold, to be honest.
To me, number one, I've always believed there's no replacement for displacement. And I guess it depends on what your ultimate goal is, right? But I just my goal is big displacement, so it's true. That expression is definitely true. And I also like the roadster look. That's what I love about the R9T. And I like the chopped off seat, so that if you scoot back, you're sitting on the rear tire.
I think that's part of it. I don't know if I like that. It feels like it's missing something on to me, it doesn't. The proportions don't look right.
Well, maybe that's true. And a lot of times, maybe it'll grow on you. Because a lot of times things...
Like a fungus?
I'm starting to like the Puro Sang, and I didn't like it at first, so... But anyway, I thought it was cool that they even have that concept. And it's it's among the giant bikes, like the Triumph Rocket 3. It's just huge, and I like that idea. Let's move on to what I think is some of the most earth-shattering news in the automotive. It was widely expected, and you and I have been talking about Porsche and the possibility of a hybrid 911 for at least a year now.
It's been in the ether.
Now we found out, on Monday that, I mean, not only did we get confirmation, but we saw like a whole presentation. Porsche did a very produced and scripted presentation. Cool. It was not good.
No, it was cringe. It was very cringe.
It was super cringeworthy. But the technology, at least in my mind, and I don't know that much about mechanics, but it's so cool. What do you think about the hybrid GTS 911 GTS?
I'm shocked because I thought you were going to hate on it.
Well, I think it's amazing. Like the battery works in the transmission, and it also controls the turbo fan, so the gases and.
Yes, there's no turbo lag. It's still a flat six. I mean, it's not like it.
It's a bigger flat six because
you
know, I was bummed out when they went from 3.8 liters back down to 3 liters and twin turbos. Now it's 3.6 and it's got just one big turbo.
Completely, that's not a problem, and it weighs it weighs 100 pounds more than the non-hybrid, but it's faster and more powerful. I've been online, I've read the comments from the peanut gallery. Of course the purists are gonna hate it. But
there is a lot of stuff to grind my gears on this.
We should get into that. But
I will say,
big picture.
Yes,
I don't have a problem with it. I don't understand. Like, this goes back to my thing where I can't be bothered to really care if the end result is fun to drive.
Yep.
And looks cool. I don't really care what's under the hood. I don't know if that's wrong or
care
right,
about
but
I'm
having trouble caring.
Well,
I mean, I need to drive it, obviously, but
I care a lot, but
Why?
In both directions. So, number one, I applaud Porsche for just continuing to push the envelope with technology. And when you hear hybrid, you're worried that they're going to ruin it, and they don't. They just made it better, honestly, with this technology. And so, of course, I still cherish like an air-cooled Porsche.
Sure.
But
and you can still
you can go get those, right?
Yeah,
they're all over the place.
This is another tool in the tool belt.
And I also think every time they come out with a new 911, I think it just looks better and better. I even thought, and I'm old enough to have thought at the time that the 996 looked better than the 993. At the time,
really?
Yes.
Really?
Okay. In hindsight,
With those
I changed
headlights?
I know. In hindsight, I changed my opinion. But every time they push a little bit forward, they just make such subtle changes. Okay, the cracked egg headlights were not subtle, but
if the 993 is good enough for Jordan, it's good enough for me.
To me, now the 993 and the 996 are the least attractive of the whole group, because the 997 went back to a more classic look. The 991 I thought looked even better, and I bought one. The 992 I liked even better, and now these little changes that they've made. For example, they took out the little long line lights in the bumper, and I'm so happy about that.
I think that's a really good move, and even today, I was looking through, like, really spending time, really sort of trying to dive in and wrap my head around this, because I'm going to go drive it in a couple weeks. So I really want to try to understand. And I love what they did to the front apron.
Yeah.
With I'm like, that's cool. And again, I know, look, people are going to hate on it, but I think it's cool. I'm not overthinking it. It looks cool.
Agree. There are issues I do have.
Let's discuss.
So I'll go in order from least important to most important. I've never been a huge fan of the taillight going all the way across a Carrera 4. I feel like that should have just stuck with the Carrera 4, and now it's on everything.
Why do you think they kept that, by the way?
I think that's just become a Porsche signature, and it is from the Macan to the 911, and I don't mind it, but I'm just not a fan. If I were customizing my own 992.2, if I took my brand new Porsche to Singer or whatever, I would say please delete that.
I agree, because it's just like someone who has more of a wide hip set wearing a big belt on top of the hips.
Yes.
It's just like it doesn't play to your strengths, and it doesn't in particular favor that shape of body.
Yeah. And although, side note, I'm a big hip lover.
Well, we love big hips, and 992
I like big hips, and I cannot lie.
Is hippie. Yeah, not about the hips, but what I'm saying is, like, you can really play it up in a different way, I guess.
On the hips note, and I guess this has been the case since 992.1. There's no longer a difference if you get the GTS or Carrera 4 or Turbo. It used to be that if you get the base 911 or the Carrera S, you still had the narrow body, and then you didn't get the wider hips.
You're saying a difference in body style.
Yes, you didn't get the wider rear end until you got to the all-wheel drive or
like you could look at the
turbo.
car and know. You could kind of guess what's under the hood based on the body.
This was one of the reasons you got the GTS. Like in 991 Porsche, you got the GTS because you could have the wider hips and still have rear-wheel drive only, which was otherwise impossible in the line. Plus, you wanted to be able to get a stick shift, a manual transmission, and you got center lock wheels. Those three, I think, were the main
We should talk
differences.
about center locks, too, by the way.
And what do you not like? I love center lock wheels. Do you not like?
But they're inconvenient and they're difficult to manage.
To me, that's worth it. It's worth it. It just looks so cool. You're getting rid of those bolts. You know.
I do think it looks cool, but I do think if you're someone who likes to work on your car or switch out things on your car, they're really inconvenient
and
difficult
expensive
to live
like,
with. Yes.
Yeah. If you're like, I need another set of wheels. Ooh,
right.
That's
and you know what?
$10,000.
You can't change a tire if you need to. Really. I mean, you got to have the right tools for it. It just.
I'm willing to suffer for that.
All right. That's fair.
For that luxury.
Okay.
In terms of the other changes, going again in order of least importance to most, in the middle, I would say the gauges. It's unnecessary, in my mind, to get rid of the 5 analog gauges, or most recently there were basically 4 analog gauges with one of them looking analog but being digital. It was such a great part of Porsche. And every time someone gets rid of analog gauges, BMW has done it as well, no one likes it. And we don't get used to it over time. It's not like I am now happy with the new M2 interior compared to the old. It's not cool to get rid of analog gauges. Why do they all do it?
I don't know. I don't know because I don't think anybody's asking for it. It has to be something where they just think it's part of modernizing the car.
It's like if Rolex said, okay, let's put a quartz movement instead of automatic because it's more reliable, and let's get rid of the sweeping second hand and make it tick.
No,
why would you do that?
I'm with you on that, and that's a question I will be asking when I go on this press drive, because I don't get who's asking for this. I feel like this is the automaker giving us something they think we should have.
It might be a cost-saving thing, like like an electric handbrake is another thing that nobody wants. But the thing is, it's supposed to be a luxury vehicle, right?
Right.
To me, if it's luxury, you have real analog gauges, preferably a handbrake. By the way, when are you going to drive this car?
June 24th.
Okay, you're going to Sevilla for that again.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure
I'll report back.
It's going to be an amazing car. There's no doubt about it.
Do you want to talk about the shifting?
Okay, so that's the most important thing, so I get on the configurator. The Porsche configurator is the second biggest time suck in my life after BAT, right?
Yes.
And I love to configure usually a Carrera T. I like to do that, or a GTS. Those are like my two go-tos. But the first thing I do in every Porsche, in every 911 that I configure, even though I respect the PDK and the technology in it, is I put a manual transmission. I need to row my own gears. In fact, the first time I ever drove a Porsche, like 10 years ago or maybe 15 years ago, I went over to Germany and Porsche let me drive a Carrera 4S for the week. And it was an amazing gift. And that's a
good intro.
I learned so much. It was a PDK. It's very fast on the Autobahn. I had a great time. But I felt something was missing. And when I got home, my brother picked me up in his old Audi A4 station wagon with a 6-speed. And I drove it, and I had way more fun than I had in the Porsche. And the main reason is the stick shift, right? Lightweight, small car, rear-wheel drive with a stick. It's so engaging. It's so fun. And ever since then, I've always opted for a stick in that kind of car, and I bought a 991 with a stick for that reason. There is no stick available on the configurator. You can't get it in
for the 992.2.
Yeah, well, on Porsche.com, you can't configure anything else, right? You can only configure the new car. So, like, they have the base Carrera, which, by the way, would be my choice now. I would probably go for the Cabriolet.
I think that's good value. Yeah.
400 horsepower. But there's no Carrera T. The GTS doesn't, and I believe won't come with a manual transmission. And obviously, it's not in the turbo. They do have the S/T on there, but that costs. I mean, how much is it?
Still, I think it's like $280.
And
starting.
Also, I'm pretty sure they're sold out. Like, it's nice of them to leave it on the configurator so nerds like me can still have fun with it, but I don't think you can get one anymore.
But here's the thing: the configurator isn't real life. And if you want a manual 992, you can go buy a manual 992. It's going to be the .1.
Right.
But you can go buy a manual, plenty of modern manual 911s, and the configurator is for aesthetics. It's not for driving.
Well, it's also for fun and to help you make a connection with the brand, and it definitely achieves that purpose with me. And also, I have faith that Porsche will come out with a new Carrera T.
I think they will.
Because that's, for me, it's the slam dunk,
it's the
obvious choice. They've made all the brakes bigger on the 992.2. So the only problem I had previously with the Carrera T versus anything else was that it had the smaller brakes of the base and didn't have the S brakes. And I bet you the new one will, and it'll have a stick. So,
as much as I quibble with some decisions at Porsche, I do think there's a plan. If we know anything about Porsche, we know that they know how to create demand and generate hype around whatever new model they have coming. So, to your point, Matt, I'm confident that will be coming.
I'll put a W there for Porsche, like win, win, win.
For sure.
Everywhere except the gauges. Because that's, even though it's a small quibble, and obviously it wouldn't change my decision to buy a new 911, it's the kind of thing where they're not going to go back, even though they should. And I don't know if it's because it saves them money to put the same screens in all of the cars.
I'm going to ask about that because that's a really good point, and I don't know the answer.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Porsche. I'm looking forward to your drive.
Me too.
To hear what you have to say, and I hope that we can get someone cool when you're in Sevilla. Please try and find the coolest engineer to come on this podcast with us.
I will lean on them for that.
Nice. The only other thing that we had to talk about was electric SUVs.
Oh, yes.
Which is like cue, push stop on the podcast, right? Like, does anyone care? Does anyone care?
You know what? We did have it. I didn't write it, but Bloomberg had a story earlier this week about how EV sales, actually, this cooling period might just be a blip. And actually, a lot of automakers from Ford to Hyundai saw big gains in Q1. I'll have to send you that article, Matt. But
here's the thing, Hannah. You test drive cars all the time, right?
Yes.
But you have also a couple of your own cool cars.
Yes.
So there are times, I'm betting, when an OEM delivers a car to you and you're like, I'd rather drive my car. Thanks very much.
Yep.
And I'm guessing when they're EVs, that's often the case.
I more dread it when I think they might be poorly made. That's the truth. I've got one coming up that I'm going to tell you offline. I always hope I'm wrong. The electric thing, honestly, I'll tell you the difference. If it's an electric vehicle, generally I really have to force myself to drive it if it's not just my commute. That's the difference. It's like I won't just be taking it out on Angeles Crest or out to Malibu on the weekend or to Sunset Tower for a dinner. Like, I'm much less likely to do that with an electric vehicle. The EVs, I'm like, it's fine when I drive from my house in Hollywood to Century City and back. It's actually a really nice environment. It's nice.
There are exceptions also. Like, did you drive the Rolls-Royce Spectre?
Yes, I did, but I haven't had that in the States. I drove that in South Africa.
I can imagine it's awesome.
I loved it. It was more Rolls-Royce than Rolls-Royce. It's like exactly what Rolls should be.
The Kia EV9, I really enjoyed driving.
Drove that.
But for the most part, when an electric car comes over to my house, I'm most likely getting in the Challenger. Like, I'm not usually driving it.
I definitely treat them as commuter appliances for the most part.
I'll tell you what, I just went over, Jeep just unveiled the Grand Wagoneer S.
What'd you think? Which
is their new all-electric, mid-size SUV. They had their new CEO doing the presenting, and he was very good.
American?
Antonio Filosa. No, he's Italian.
Of course.
And he's like great looking, impeccably dressed,
I
smooth
love
talker.
It.
So yeah,
we love the Italians.
And he's perfect. He's like perfect, like FCA bro. They had Ralph Gilles there talking about design, and he's also obviously perfect. And he made me like it even more than I did when I first saw it. It is a cool design. It's very sleek. No, it's not massive.
Okay.
It's like mid-sized.
Okay.
And there's some really cool design elements. One of them is they call it the R-Wing. So it's basically a coupe style SUV, like think Cayenne.
That doesn't
like Cayenne coupe or like Audi Q8. That
like a Sportback.
A Sportback, but you can't tell unless you're looking at it directly from behind because it has this big wing that comes out and makes it look like a regular SUV, and that's just for initially for design and now for aero. And it looks really well made, and I've had a great experience driving other Jeep products. The Grand Cherokee, I'm in love with. The new motor that they have, the inline 6, which obviously isn't going to be in this all-electric vehicle, is very cool. I even like the big, boxy Grand Wagoneer. And so I have kind of got high hopes for this, but at the end, it's going to be an EV, so I don't know if I'm going to really care.
I know. Well, how do you feel about this new Cadillac SUV, the Optic?
Have
you been in their Lyric?
I have been in the Lyric, and I feel like it's like two ends of the spectrum with Cadillac. Last year, one of the best cars I drove was a Cadillac.
I know you love the Blackwing, right?
Yes, the Blackwing is an amazing piece of engineering, and the GM. Mary and Mark and everybody there, they proved themselves as real car people by putting out it is an amazing vehicle, even for the price. But the Lyric, I thought, was a huge whiff. I didn't like it. And maybe I didn't spend enough time with it, and maybe no one explained it to me right, but it just wasn't fun for me. It was, again, that kind of utility thing of non-exciting. But so the Optic or Optique? Is it Optique?
I think it's Optic.
We
can call it Optique like Target. The Optique.
It just so to be honest, the design of it. I'm looking at your story on the Bloomberg.
Yes.
It kind of looks a little bit like the Wagoneer S and all of the other midsize SUV electric cars. It's just kind of the same and boring.
It's just kind of the same. It falls in that middle ground. I honestly, and this is pivoting a little bit, but I'm still really curious about the electric Escalade. I saw press preview, and that's the one I'm actually excited about.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's a great vehicle, model line, heritage, whatever.
Yeah, and I was going to say, there are some EVs that are different, and we mentioned the Rolls-Royce Spectre.
Yes.
I think the Kia EV9. I would put probably the Escalade EV, whatever they're calling it, the IQ or whatever.
Yes.
I would group that with those because
Me too.
There's a German word, wuchtig, WUCHTIG, which means kind of like massive and powerful, like an amazing presence. And that's what I thought of instantly when I saw the new electric Escalade. And I have a feeling it's going to be a home run for sure.
That's the one I'm really, really excited for. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Optic does. I know that the Lyric started slow. They have picked up momentum with sales this year. They've already outsold. In the U.S., they've sold more in Q1 than they did last year. So they're claiming some good momentum. But to your point, I'm really looking forward to the Escalade.
All right. Yeah. Well, join us again, I guess, next week. Same time, same place. Shoot us an email at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net.
That's it, hotpursuit@bloomberg.net.
I'm Matt Miller.
I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.